Good evening. This is the world news at 6 on Voice of the People, 96.1 FM. My name is Gesire Agua. Here are the top stories. Federal government to work with governors, others to get valid data for poor people. Filing vacancies in Supreme Court, fulfillment of obligations. EU authorizes sale of vaccine against RSV in infants. Nigeria's GDP growth slows to 2.51%. On foreign scene, Russia denies killing Prigozhin's. In the world of sports, Falcons climb 8 places in the new FIFA rankings, remain first in Africa. The news in detail coming up in just a moment. It's our legacy.
Nigeria must be cool. The labor of our heroes past must never be in vain.
It's your mandate.
Our allegiance is to the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and not to any political party or any political actor.
News from all around the world. Voice of the People, 96.1 FM. Welcome back to World News at 6. Now the news in detail. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, says the federal government intends to work closely with state governors, local government and community leaders to verify and update the social registry of the country. Edu made this known while speaking on a television program, noting that this is to aid the humanitarian ministry's plan for lifting millions of Nigerians out of poverty. According to the minister, one of the very first the ministry will do almost immediately is the verification of social registry. She said they will first carry out full verification of the social register to ensure that truly it is the poorest of the poor that are those who deserve to be on the list. She stated that for weeks there has been the back and forth with the Nigerian Governors Forum and several other interested parties concerning the social register. The people who are truly poor are not on the list, stating that there are some political influences to it and the rest. The governors at the National Executive Council meeting had previously faulted the existing social register, stating that they lacked integrity and were unfit to execute any social interventions. She therefore mentioned that one of the challenges which they raised was that they were not involved in the process of really getting the poorest of the poor. She stated that working with this model will help the leaders attest that yes indeed, these are poor people in the communities. She added that once the ministry works with the NEC, they will accept it because it is their own product. In the same development, the Minister of Works, Senator David Umahi, says he is ready and set for a fight with all federal contractors who are resisting the use of concrete technology in the execution of road projects in the country. Umahi stated this during a meeting with contractors handling projects in the Northeast. He said the use of asphalt by some of the contractors is a source of funds reduction for the government, and any contractor who is not ready to work with the concrete technology will have no jobs offered to them by the ministry. The contractor handling the ongoing work on the Abuja-Kaduna road also received commendations from the new minister, who also expressed concerns about the slow pace of the work and the overly technical design by the contractor. David Umahi advised contractors to be reasonable with costing quotes and also seek ways to cut their projects into phases to enhance easy assessment and monitoring of progress made. In other news, President Bola Tinubu has assured that the government will fill the vacancies in Supreme Court, saying that it is a fulfillment of its obligations. The president also promised that his administration would conclude a thorough review of the remuneration templates of the judicial officers in the country. Receiving the leadership of the Nigerian Bar Association led by Barrister Yakubu Maikyau, SAN, President Tinubu said the battle against corruption necessitated a comprehensive review of the salaries and allowances of judicial officers, an issue he said is well known to him, given his landmark success in reforming justice administration in Lagos State. While responding to a request by the NBA President Tinubu, in a statement issued by his special advisor on media and publicity, Mr. Ajuri Ngelale, was quoted as saying, "We must deal with the review of remuneration. If we truly want to fight corruption in the judiciary, we will look at the cost as well as the consequences." He acknowledged the importance of addressing the current vacancies within the Supreme Court, affirming that these vacancies represent obligations that must be fulfilled based on recommendations put forth by the National Judicial Council, NJC. Still in the news, the EU has authorized the sale of a vaccine to protect infants from respiratory virus RSV, a disease that in worst cases can lead to pneumonia and bronchitis. The block-wide marketing authorization of the jab, called Abrysvo and made by Pfizer, follows approval by the European Drug Watchdog, the European Medicines Agency (EMA), last month. The United States Food and Drug Administration gave its own authorization for the same vaccine for infants. The European Commission said its authorization for Abrysvo for infants and also with older adults was made ahead of the European autumn and winter when cases surge. EU Health Commissioner Stella Kyriakides also said this is our first EU authorized RSV vaccine that not only protects older adults but also infants already from birth. She noted that RSV in children was a leading cause for hospitalization in the EU, and she looked forward to the 27 member countries making the shot available under national vaccination programs. Still in the news, the Nigeria's gross domestic product (GDP) has slowed to 2.51% year-on-year in real terms in the second quarter of 2023. This growth rate is lower than the 3.54% recorded in the second quarter of 2022. According to the gross domestic product (GDP) report published by the NBC, the growth decline may be attributed to the challenging economic conditions being experienced. The performance of the GDP in the second quarter of the 2023 was driven mainly by the services sector, which recorded a growth of 4.42% and contributed 58.42% to the aggregate GDP. The agricultural sector grew by 1.5%, an improvement from the growth of 1.2% recorded in the second quarter of 2022. The growth of the industry sector was 1.9% relative to the 2.3% recorded in the second quarter of 2022 as well. In terms of the share of the GDP, agriculture and the industry sectors contributed less to the aggregate GDP in the second quarter of 2023 compared to the second quarter of 2022. In the quarter under review, aggregate GDP stood at 52.1 trillion naira in nominal terms. This performance is higher when compared to the second quarter of 2022, which recorded aggregate GDP of 45 trillion naira, indicating a year-on-year nominal growth of 15.77%. You've been listening to World News at 6 on Voice of the People, 96.1 FM. Coming up after the break is Foreign Stories.
News from around the world, the big stories and what's behind them, politics, business, sports and international news. This is news from around the world. This is news from around the world.
Welcome back to the world news at 6. Moving on to the foreign stories, the Kremlin dismissed rumors that it ordered the assassination of Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin, who reportedly died in an aviation incident after leading an uprising against Russia's military leadership. The crash occurred exactly 2 months after Prigozhin led a deadly rebellion against Moscow's top brass, unrest seen by observers as having been the biggest threat to President Vladimir Putin's long rule. After almost 24 hours of silence, Putin offered his sincere condolences to the families of all the victims. He described Prigozhin, once a Kremlin confidant and Western-sanctioned businessman, as a person who had made serious mistakes in his life, but he achieved the right results. The 69-year-old was registered on the plane that was carrying 9 others who also presumed to have died. Prigozhin has yet to be formally identified as among the victims. In the world of sports, Nigeria's Super Falcons have moved up 8 places from the 40th to 32nd team in the world, according to the latest women's ranking released by FIFA. In the list by the World Football Governing Body, the 11-time African champions maintained its position as the number 1 female national team on the continent. The impressive leap by the Falcons in the latest ranking is largely due to the team's stellar outing at the just concluded 2023 Women's World Cup. The Nigeria team made it into the second round of the competition after a draw against Canada in their first game, a win against co-hosts Australia in their second match, and a draw against the Republic of Ireland, which helped them qualify out of Group B with 5 points. The Falcons dragged European champions and eventual finalist England to penalty shootout, where they lost 4-2 in their second round action-packed encounter. Despite Spain lifting the World Cup trophy in Australia, it is Sweden that claimed the top spot in the latest FIFA rankings, with the La Roja making it to the second spot from 4th. The Scandinavians dethroned the USA, who are now 3rd down from 2nd. And now to wrap up, here again are the top stories. Federal government to work with governors, others to get valid data of poor people. Filing vacancies in Supreme Court, fulfillment of obligations. EU authorizes sale of vaccine against RSV in infants. Nigeria's GDP growth slows to 2.51%. On a foreign scene, Russia denies killing Prigozhin. In the world of sports, Falcons climb 8 places in the new FIFA rankings, remain first in Africa. Now that is a wrap on the world news at 6. Thank you for listening. The news was edited and compiled by Amarachi Jim Woko. Good evening and many thanks for listening once again. My name is Gesire Agua. Coming up next is your Evening Rush.